going? It's Jessie from Jessie Does Stuff. I am here to do my cross stitch tag. Is anybody surprised that I'm actually here doing this tag today? I know I am. This tag has been going around for quite some time. I want to say almost a year. I actually had to go back and look at Stitching May's archives to try to find the questions written out because I couldn't find them anywhere. And had to go way back. So anyway, we won't ramble on about why it's taken me so long to do this tag. We're here now. And so let's just go ahead and get started. So I have my questions typed out here. So if you see me looking down or at something, that's what I'm looking at. So I suppose we'll just start at the beginning. How did you start, or who introduced you to cross stitch? I've mentioned this before, but I'll just reiterate. First and foremost, I am a book blogger. I have had my book blog for going on 3 years now. I started it, I want to say, in November of 2011, and through that I met another book blogger named Stephanie and her blog Once Upon a Chapter. And one Saturday, she has a regular feature, or she used to hold a regular feature in her blog about crafting, and it happened every Saturday. And one Saturday I just happened to look at her blog, and it was about cross stitch, and I was immediately intrigued. And so I did a little bit more research from there and ordered my first little learn a craft kit just to see if I could try it out and give it a try. And the rest, I guess you could say, is history. I was addicted immediately after finishing that first project, and I haven't really stopped since, and I don't intend to. So that's how I got started. Do you have a favorite theme or designer? This is sort of a fluid question. I could answer it one way today, and a month from now it could be vastly different. And I've noticed that throughout my 18 months or so of stitching that it's changed progressively over time. It's either gotten more complex or simpler in some cases. I've gone through phases where I was adamant about stitching only Heaven and Earth designs, and then I was like, no, I'm not stitching any Heaven and Earth designs because I've got a couple and that's enough, and I want to do something else. Currently, though, I can answer this currently. Currently, my favorite theme, I am after the perfect autumn cross-stitch project. I love autumn. It's my favorite season, and I've been trying to find just that perfect project for autumn, and I haven't had the best of luck. I thought about doing a pick-to-pat, but I haven't really found a piece of artwork that I can use because I pay attention to copyright licenses and things like that. So I haven't found one that I can use that I like enough to put in the effort and the time. So anyway, my favorite theme right now is autumn. And my favorite designers, I wrote down just a quick list of a few that I liked the most. Chatelaine, Rosewood Manor, Victoria Sampler, and what was the other one? Oh, Glendon Place. And so those are the four that I regularly check them out, and then I'll add a bunch of stuff to my cart on 1-2-3 Stitch, let's say, and then I'm like, no, I have so much to work on, I'm not adding any more right now, and so I delete it all out of my cart, only to do the same thing either the next day or several hours later. So those are currently the designers that I'm most after. What floss brand do you use? DMC. It's the most readily available. I will use suggested threads. I think that my OCD plays itself out in my cross stitch because I really like to use what the pattern suggests. I like, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes I'll get the fabric and all of the threads listed just as it is because I want my finished product to look like the finished product that had me so obsessed in the first place. So DMC for my just general six strand cotton, dye lot, floss. That's DMC is my go-to. My fabric of choice, linen. I really like stitching on linen because I like the way the stitches sit on top of the linen. They're kind of puffed out as opposed to laying flat. My dog is outside sniffing, so if you hear some funny snorting noises, that's Thor. Anyway, so I like linen. I also like even weaves, and I'm even contemplating an Aida project. I'm not really sure why, but I feel the need to do another Aida project. I haven't worked on Aida in a long time, so kind of in the mood. We'll see. Okay, question 5. Do you use a needle threader or are you a floss licker? Floss licker, right here. I don't even own a needle threader. The tool time tag that Joanne came up with, a lot of people are showing off their needle threaders. I don't even have one because I just like the floss. I try to thread it dry without licking it, but that doesn't always go over so well. What kind of stitching frame do you use? My go-tos are the Q-snaps and my Millennium. 100%, those are the ones that I use the most. Now, I say 100%, but now that I think about it, I'm currently working on a project that's too small for either of those, and so I'm using a hoop. I don't like using a hoop. I don't like the marks. I don't like the fact that I can work for an hour, take my project out of the hoop, and still see that ring. Whereas if I work for an hour on my Q-snaps or my Millennium frame and I take it out, the evidence of having used a frame is not so strong. So I don't like the hoop, but I'm using it because it's a teeny tiny project that I'm working on, and so it's just the only feasible option for me. I haven't tried stitching in hand yet. I'm a little terrified of doing that, but I don't know. I don't know that that's necessarily for me, just because I really like the tension and the finished product from the frame. So there's that. How many projects have you finished? So before I started filming here, I counted them all up, and altogether I have 16 finished projects. Technically, I should probably call that 14. You may remember last year I did 3 butterflies for my nieces, and so for the 16 I counted those individually, and for the 14 I counted them as one project together, so take it how you will. We'll go 15, you know, middle of the road there. So that's how many projects I have finished. How many completed works do you have currently displayed in your home? That would be 0. I have intention to display some, but I haven't yet. And part of that is just because I don't have any finishing techniques in my repertoire to figure out how to do that. But that is on the to-do list. Specifically my Martinez roses and my Home Sweet Home. I'd like to get those finished and displayed. Do you do more stitching for gifts or keep them for yourself? This question is kind of funny because I thought that I stitched for myself. And then as I listed out the projects that I've done and that I've finished, I believe for myself I have only done 4. Maybe 5. 4 or 5 for myself, and the other 10 or so for other people. So I guess that I stitch more for gifts, but without meaning to. I need to do some more for myself, and I think that the main reason that most are for gifts is because the ones that I have for me are big. They're my larger projects. They're my Heaven and Earth designs. They're my chatelaine. I did do Santa as a gift, but for the most part, My big projects are for me, and the smaller ones, you know, whip those out pretty quick in a week or so. So that kind of explains why I have more gifts than I do finishes for myself. What is your favorite project or finish that you are most proud of? I don't think that this will come as a surprise to anybody when I say that Winter White Santa by Mirabilia is my favorite finish. I loved that project. I loved every minute of that project. No, not every minute. The struggle that I had with the bugle beads and some of the Krennic that I used for that project I didn't love so much, but I really loved that project. I loved the finish. I loved all the colors coming together. I loved the beading and the details, and yeah, that was a good project. And I can't wait to see it around Christmas time because I miss it. Okay. What has been your least favorite experience while stitching? When I first considered this question, I thought, well, I don't have a least favorite experience while stitching, but that, of course, is sort of a delusional notion to maintain, because we all have our least favorite experiences. We all have that time where you stitch the same part 3 times, and for whatever reason, you're still 1 stitch off. We all have the, I wish I could be finished with the back stitching, or can I please stop using this color, or you know, we've all experienced the I hate DMC metallics, and we all have a story about why we hate those metallics. But of all of the experiences that I have had stitching, my least favorite is the VT that I did for Danny's mom. You'll remember I finished it at some point last year, and it was a big VT, very similar to my necklace here, and it had 3 colors in it, and it had white, it had 720, which is orange spice, and it had orange spice, I think that's right, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an orange color, and then it had 902, which is a garnet or a maroon, depending on, you know, what you want to call it. But DMC calls it a garnet. And I went through 4 skeins of 902 to finish that project. And, you know, I enjoy confetti stitching. I might be a little weird about that, but I like the detail that you can get out of confetti stitching. It can be a bit of a slog, but nothing drove me crazier than having to go through 4 skeins of 1 color. A color that I love very much, don't get me wrong, but I just got so tired of looking at it. And I was using a white Aida at the time, and it's a dark color, and the dark colors on white Aida, unless you're using 3 or 4 strands, you can't get that great of coverage, and it was just super frustrating, on top of the fact that I had originally done a whole other project for this called Keep Calm and Gobble On, and I ended up having to start over because I didn't like what my cross-stitch program chose for the colors for that. So yeah, I would say that that VT was probably my least favorite experience, and it was late. We were supposed to give it to her for Mother's Day, and it didn't end up going to her until Christmas, and that project. I'm so glad that I don't have to look at that much 902 ever again. Every time I see that color come up, it's in pearl, very intermittently, but specifically in the butterflies and her wings. And every time that color comes up, I'm like, ugh, curse this color. I hate it. Which of course I don't, but anyway. So that's my least favorite experience. Okay, question 12. What do you love and what do you like least about cross stitch? I changed this question because it originally used what do you hate about cross stitch, and I hate nothing. But there are things that I like least. So let's start there because I like to end on a good note. What do I like least? I like least when I have user error. I like least that I'm working on my master's degree and sometimes I can't count to 10. I like least that I have been working on Mini Pearl for as long as I have without an end really in sight. Cross-stitch projects take a long time. You know, I started knitting recently and I can whip those projects out relatively quickly. I mean, I'm a slow knitter and I can still whip those out relatively quickly. Like, I finished a shawl, a wearable item, in 3 months. Now that's slow, but 3 months and it was done. Cross stitch takes much longer than that. So, what do I love about cross stitch? Oh gosh, without getting like sentimental, too sentimental anyway. I don't even know how to put this into words. I like my time with it. I like the whole process of it. I love sitting down every morning with my cup of coffee. I pull out my pattern either on my iPad or the printed version. I thread that first needle in the morning and I start my morning off just up and down threading through the fabric. I love that. I've never considered myself a terribly creative person, and cross stitch has been a creative outlet for me. I love our community. I love getting to talk to other people about cross stitch. I love that cross stitch is the reason that I am on YouTube, because had it not been for cross stitch, I would have never done anything like this because I am such an introvert. I love stashing. It makes me so happy. I have a weird thing about gifts and presents, and every time I get a package in from 123 Stitch, it's like Christmas once every week or every 2 weeks. I'm not that bad, guys. I'm just kidding. Probably once every few weeks, though. Yeah, I love cross stitch. It's just the best. I wish that I had started earlier. I wish that I had been introduced at a younger age, but nobody in my family has ever done it. I mean, they've done it, but you know, they did it 30 some odd years ago and it wasn't something that stuck for them. So yeah, I love it. It's good stuff. Okay. Now, before I get a tear, no, I'm just kidding. Let's see. Question 13. Have you introduced anyone else to cross stitch? Yes. Danny, my boyfriend. Okay. So when I finished my very first project, I was like light in my eyes, excited about this craft. I was so geeked about it. And he really liked it. He was like really curious about it, and he was asking me how I did things, and he was amused by the fact that you take this string and you take this fabric and poof, you know, you can make art essentially. And so one day I said to him, do you want to do one? And he said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, I'd give it a try. You know, why not? I bet it's something that we could do together. I'm like, oh, yay. So we go to Michael's, and this is where it gets funny. If he ever sees this, he's probably going to kill me. But we had a hard time. He wanted to do a small one like the one that I started on. He wanted to do a Dimensions Learner Craft. And, you know, I mean, the selection is pretty limited. They're kind of girly. They aren't really geared towards 30-year-old men. Like, you know, there wasn't really anything there that really sparked his interest. And he said, well, here's how this is going to happen. We're going to walk over there and we're going to look at them, and I'm going to tell you which one I think you should do, and you should grab it, because he said, I think he said something to the effect of, I don't want to be seen carrying that around. Which, you know, just kind of irks me just a little bit, but I understand. I understand what he's saying. And so we settled on this one. Now, Danny is not a drinker of wine in the slightest. So, I mean, this, you know, has very little appeal to him, but all of the other ones just were so very not his style that this really was the closest thing. And this is where he got. Now, this was over a year ago. This is still in the hoop from when he was doing it. It's still pretty taut, though. There's the back of his work. But yeah, all he's gotten done is just a little bit of the field there. So, and then he, I think he got off at some point, like he got off counted and got frustrated and just said to heck with it, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I keep asking him, you know, are you ever going to finish your cross stitch? Are you ever going to do it? And he said, yeah, maybe. I don't know. So I might be finishing that one for him. So I introduced him, and he gave it a shot, and it may not be for him, and that's okay. That's okay. So, yeah. I would like to introduce my nieces to it, but once they get older, and I can think of maybe a friend or two that I might introduce to it, but, you know, not yet. Okay. So, question 14. What was your first project, and did you finish it? And my answer to that is yes, I finished it, and it is this here. So this is another Dimensions Learn a Craft, and it was Take Time. And I haven't looked at this in a while, and I think it looks pretty darn good for my first go around. I remember my backstitch got way off. Like my backstitch was pretty terrible in some spots. I think it was in that pink shell there that I got most off on the backstitch, but nonetheless. So there is my first project ever, and I finished it in about 2.5 days because I just couldn't stop. You guys want to see the back? It's really not so bad. You know, I did carry like the sand color here, and my backstitch mess is everywhere. But it's not terrible. It could be a lot worse. So this was my introduction. And at one point or another, I would like to maybe frame this in a hoop and put it in my bathroom or something. We'll see. And then the last question is, how do you store your floss? Well, my DMCs, I have 5 of these boxes, and I just store them on little plastic bobbins. I hand wind them. I kind of get some therapeutic time, I guess, by hand winding, and I also hand write them on. This one was written in pen, but I do most of them in permanent marker. I have a chunky permanent marker. Oh yeah. Here, well, look at this one. 995. Look at how bright that is, guys. You remember I was talking about this before? Anyway, so my DMCs, that's how I store them. Now, I have them all in order, but that's not how I store them for my projects, and I'm going to have to do a separate video on how I do, how I kit up my projects, because it's completely separate from this. I essentially have a master set of DMCs, and then I use those to stitch my projects. I don't have 100% of them. Now, if it comes to specialty threads, I didn't even think about this when I brought everything over here, but I used the Floss Away bags with an index card. And then on the back side of the index card, I place, oh, let's start that over. In the front side of the index card, I place all of my clippings. And so if I have a length that I've used, then I will put that length in the front there. And then the remainder of the skein sits back behind the card, and I wind that into a yarn butterfly. And I can go into more details about that at another time, but not right now because I don't have it with me. And you heard the animal out there. He's getting kind of restless. He's not too keen on me filming right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. I will be back, I want to say about this time next week, with a little bit of a haul, because I went a little overboard, as per the usual. And then I also have a how I tackle Heaven and Earth designs, and the tool time tag. Maybe I'll do that one this time next year. And yeah, that about does it. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for posting your videos as always. If you have been on YouTube and I haven't commented on your videos, make sure you comment here, because a lot of times I will subscribe to channels before you started posting videos, or I didn't subscribe because you weren't posting videos. And if you are now, I would very much like to see them. And so if I'm late to the party, let me know, and I'll be sure to play catch up. Alrighty guys, I will see you next time. Bye, and happy stitching.